Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Some Christian Guy, and as usual, find me on Facebook, YouTube one way, and now on BitChute as well. Assuming that they do what they're supposed to, and my uploads, and they automatically upload everything from YouTube, because you can link the accounts. So anyway, let's hope that works. The last one didn't go so well, so I'm giving it time. Anyway, today, the 10th contradiction. According to these guys, to the atheist detractors, there are two contradictory accounts of creation, right? According to them, they reckon that when they go to Genesis 1 and to Genesis 2, that these two passages reveal a creation account that's contradictory, right, in some fashion. Now, before we continue, let us establish what we always establish. If this is in fact a contradiction, right, would it affect the Christian, any of our core doctrines or anything, sort of in any kind of way, right? Would it be a problem for what we established in Timothy yesterday, and the verse that we always use, the reference verse, reproof, you know, the usual blah for doctrine unto good works, and so on and so forth. If this is a contradiction, would it actually be a hindrance to that thing, so in such a way that it's like we can no longer say that this is any kind of infallible or reliable thing for that particular purpose? And the answer is actually yes, because and the reason for that is because obviously a lot for Christianity rests on the creation account, right? Now, there are a lot of lunatics today that have completely abandoned everything for evolution. Now, if you want to believe in evolution, that's fine, you know, and so on and so forth. This is not a discussion about evolution. However, Christianity and evolution are mutually exclusive. It's that simple, and it's not without a lot of mind bending and completely overturning everything that not only Christians but Jews have believed for the last 3,000 years. Just chuck that all out and say, well, that's no longer applicable. It's ridiculous, right? Either the tradition of the past 3,000 odd years is sound because this was revealed to us by God, or it's not, you know, and then therefore science is more reliable than the revelations that God gives us about the natural world, right? You know, and you get these ridiculous things where they say, oh, it's just a poetic, imagistic thing. It's like, that's absolute garbage, first of all, because first of all, they had the language in those days to say, listen, God, evolution is true, right? It's not like the language didn't exist, okay? They could have just as easily said everything's billions of years old. The language was there. So if God had wanted to say that and wanted to convey that, if that was the case, he could have done so, right? Those old languages, in a lot of ways, were even more sophisticated than ours, a lot more precise than even our English language today, which as in a lot of ways, our language. English today is not as good as it necessarily was back in the day. I mean, there's a lot of words that make very, very good distinctions between things, and now we just use one word generically. For example, the words love and charity, right? Charity, in the old days, charity meant love, all right? It was like in the Greek, you've got, I think, four or five different words for love. And each one connotates a different aspect of love, a different kind of relationship. And it's the same thing in English with love and charity. But nowadays, charity merely means giving money to poor people, you know, and socialism and stuff like that. You know, it's completely idiotic. The word charity today no longer, and so we just use the one word love for everything. It's like you can, not only can you love your spouse, but you can love your stupid car or your bag and stuff like that. It's become, the word love has become completely and utterly meaningless, right? Whereas in those days, this wasn't the case, right? They had very, very specific words for things, and it was a lot better. So if they had the language, and if God wanted to communicate evolution, he could have done so. And As far as I'm concerned, the whole thing is just it's ridiculous. And in fairness, it's actually a back. It's what a lot of Christians don't realize is that the acceptance of evolution, if we put all the scientific stuff aside, the acceptance of evolution is actually Christians reverting back to a pagan view of the world, because paganism teaches evolution, right? Evolution is not new. It's not new in the slightest. It's been around as long as Christianity and Judaism have been around and taught their creation narrative. You know, the pagans have always believed in a kind of evolution. All right, so it's nothing new at all. We've been down this road before. Anyway, so let's go and have a look at the verses which they say form a contradiction, and let's see whether there's actually in fact a contradiction over here, and whether we're actually sort of theologically in trouble in any way. So we're going to go to the first one. And so it says here, so this is chapter 1. God said, made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle, and everything that creepeth on the ground after his kind. Boom. Okay, so first he made the beasts, and then God said, let us make man in our image, and let him have dominion over everything. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. Now this is very important, okay? So the order is beasts, then man, and over here it's talking about he's created he him, male and female. So over here it's already women have now, or the female's already been created, okay? This is very important. Now we go to the second one, and here's where people sort of think, where they think it's a contradiction, because it's basically the order is in the wrong way around. Where it says over here, and the Lord God says, not good that man should be alone. So in this, man's already been created now, okay? And then it says, and out of the ground, right, the Lord formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air. All right, so it seems that man first and beast second, and then Eve last. Okay, so that seems to be a funky order here. Now, as soon as I point it out to you, you're going to be like, of course, okay? That is if you haven't already spotted the problem, okay? Whoever came up with this objection is either, you can see that whoever's dealing with this text, in order to believe that there's a contradiction here, is either completely illiterate, all right, or self-evidently, unless the person is really illiterate and a bit stupid, that they can't understand a plain reading of things, right, then this is a prime example of an individual's prejudice against something coming through and seeing something where there is nothing, okay? And this is very interesting, because the majority of atheistic objections to religion is on moral basis, right? A lot of the whole science and religion and stuff like that is an absolute bloody farce, okay? It's a farce. It's just rhetoric. It's garbage. The most powerful arguments that atheism has against religion in general, not just Christianity, are moral arguments, right? And one of the big moral arguments is they like to lay against religious people, is that we're prejudiced against those who are not of our tribe, as it were. And yet constantly, and you can see it now as we've been going through all these things, that the people doing this are either utter morons, or they're just so prejudiced and blinded by their prejudice, right? So here's the hypocrisy, where they want to say that we're prejudiced, right? And to a large degree, Christians don't really deny that, because it's like, yeah, we have certain morals and certain standings and God has certain laws, and if we do not live by it and do not abide by it, well then I'm sorry, we cannot have anything to do with you, right? And people are quite happy when we do that with murderers and rapists, right? But then they want to jump around up and down like a bunch of idiots when it comes to other cherished little things like the whole transgender and the LGBT and all that garbage sort of thing. So they're quite happy when we're, so it's totally arbitrary you know, and they expect Christians to be totally arbitrary, and they exhibit nothing but abject prejudice against Christianity and against religious people in general. And yet in the way they deal with the scriptures, you can see there's no honesty, there's no integrity whatsoever. It's just pure prejudice that comes out. It's unbelievable, honestly unbelievable. And it's actually quite bloody irritating, to be honest, because if someone just took 5 seconds to read the stupid verse, they'd figure it out. A 5-year-old could figure it out. So anyway, so if I'm actually going to give you the verse prior to this. So that's 25. I'm actually going to give you the verse before, to give it a little bit of extra context, right? And God said, right? So in the first creation account, it's giving you an overview clearly, right? And and you need to pay attention. And God said, right? So here God is creating by speaking, right? And it was so, right? And God made the beasts of the earth, so God created by speaking, and this was the order, right? And then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them So again, God is speaking here, and these things happen for God. So it's giving you an overview clearly, right? Clearly is giving you an overview. So God created man in his own image, in the image of God, male and female. Boom, is giving you this is clearly an overview story, right? And then number 2, it goes into details, because now here's what it says. And the Lord God said, it is not good that man should be alone. So now this is obviously once creation has happened, right? And he sees man, he hasn't created woman yet. You can see it's now, so it's not a contradiction. It's an overall general story, and it's now zooming into a particular circumstance within the overarching story, and is giving extra little details, right? This is not a recapitulation of what came before, right? So here, and there's actually doctrine in here, which is actually good, because I'm going to bring out the doctrine, right? I will make him a helpmeet for him. And this is why Christians cannot agree with the LGBT movement, right? Because God is like, I will make him a helpmeet for him. So Eve hasn't been created yet. And so out of the ground, the Lord forms. So now here God is not just speaking. He's actually forming it out of the ground. God, and in the creation story, for us, in order to show us how invested God is with human beings and all that kind of stuff, right? All of creation God spoke into existence, but only man, and in this particular instance with this particular creation of animals here, only in this instance does God actually get down on his hands and knees and get physically involved, down hands and knees, taking the earth and forming and taking the time to do this, to perform this particular project, right? Because God wants to get he gets personally involved in you as an individual. And also because if we go into other doctrines in the Bible, God is very, very, very interested in being personally involved in between your choice and your decision over whom you will marry. And we can extrapolate from that, right? So a lot of these days, when people get married, it's basically two morons that don't know what they're doing, just going off and getting married, and then they wonder why they have bad luck, right? Then they get divorced. Oh, well, love is and then they come up with all these idiotic philosophies that maybe love is not true and marriage is not really true. It's like you went into it like a bunch of dumbasses, right? You didn't listen to the advice of your parents. You didn't listen to the advice of your friends, perhaps, if you've got decent friends. And you're not interested in understanding the religious aspects about what we expect, about what should happen, all the considerations that you should make before marrying someone. You go off, you marry a complete imbecile, and then you want to cry for the rest of your life because how life is unfair, right? And that's what people are like, you know. So God, and we know from the Bible that God wants to be actively involved in every part of your life, and in your choice in spouse is he wants to get personally involved. And when God created someone to help Adam, he did not merely create another Adam or another man or anything. There's a reason why he created a woman, someone who was different, to be a helpmeet, right? Because she was literally everything he wasn't, right? She completed him. it made no sense to just make another being exactly like he was. It's idiotic, right? You don't get, how is that helpful, right? You want so he made another being, someone who was not like him, who had its own qualities, its own properties, its own view of the world, and together they would have a complete view of the world and then can cooperate and stuff like that. So when all these LGBT and all that kind of stupidity goes on and stuff like that, the reason why a Christian cannot agree, right, is not because of prejudice. It's not because we want to hate these people or because we want to do whatever the case might be. But unlike atheists and unlike the rest of the people in the world, we as religious people, we understand in something called telos. There is a purpose for why certain things are the way they are, right? Why do you not drive your car into the ocean, right? Because of telos. It's not made for that. And if you go and you do that, you're gonna come short. Because the way something is designed, there's a telos in mind, there's a purpose in mind, and we know that when we make anything, there's telos, there's purpose. How this thing is, the way this thing is used is defined by the telos that was present. I made X for this particular purpose. So still got that cold. So men were not designed for other men, and women were not designed for... That's not what we were designed for, right? We were designed for a specific sort of thing. And that's why we say in the Bible, when we talk about stewardship and we talk about all these things, why do you look after your body? Well, because your body was not designed to be abused. It was designed to eat healthy food. It was not designed to drink alcohol. It was not designed to inhale smoke, right? All of these kinds of things. It's so obvious that it's unbelievable that the argument needs to be had at all, right? And so here is what the Bible is actually showing, is going into the detail, right? It's going into the detail. And so God is here really trying to make it very explicit that there is no one else for the man other than the woman, right? So out of the ground, so God is now he's forming every beast. This is a completely different story. Every beast of the field, every fowl of the air, and brought them to Adam to see what he would call them. So Adam is now giving the names. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. So he's showing here, and the Bible here is making sure that we understand that the only creature on the planet who had dominion and responsibility over the whole of creation was human beings, right? Was human beings. And Adam gave names and to the cattle, follow there, da da da. But for Adam there was not found a helpmeet for him, right? No helpmeet. So God is now, and Adam gets to watch this creative process because he's around. He gets to watch this creative process and gets to be a part of it, right? To witness it. God is making all these things, brings it, he names it, and not a single one of these animals was suitable to be suitable to be any kind of helpmeet or companion for him. Well, obviously, but not obviously. Go tell people who practice bestiality, right? This whole doctrine goes right out the window, and a lot of people are like, bestiality, that's disgusting. It's like, listen, the way the LGBT movement is going these days, I will not be surprised if within the next 5 to 10 years we're going to see bestiality and pedophilia be redefined as sexual orientations, okay? Because the world is perverted and idiotic, and that's where they go. That's where they go every time, right? And the reason why we know it's going to go that way is because it's already happened in the past. Whenever people abandon proper godly principles and release themselves to their animalistic tendencies, that's where it goes every single time. Every single time. It starts out with men and women abandoning each other for their own gender, and it gradually descends until they're literally mating with animals. Right? It's happened in the past. It's happened in which is why one of the reasons why God destroyed a lot of the old civilizations. Right? Men and women abandon each other. Then they start sleeping with their own gender. Then they start sleeping with children, with innocent children, and then from innocent children they go on to animals. That's how it goes, and that's where it's going right now. That's where it's going. Okay. but we're too stupid to see it, and politically correct to see it, right? So out of none of these creatures, none at all, was there found a helpmeet. And God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And here, so in this particular scenario, Adam does not witness, he witnesses the creation of all the other animals, but he does not witness the creation of Eve, right? And this is the proper way that it is supposed to be, because for men, woman will forever be a mystery to us, and that is part of a lot of people lament this fact, but this is part of the charm. One of the reasons that we're so attracted and we're so pulled towards each other is because there is the opposite gender holds a certain mystery, a certain appeal, and all that kind of stuff. That's why it's there, right? It's out. That person is unlike me. There's something different. There's something I don't have, sort of thing. And when you have a distortion of that through a dysfunctional upbringing, a dysfunctional situation in the home, if you have an overbearing mother, for example, like they talk about these sort of Oedipal complexes and all that. I know a lot of people are disgusted by Freud, but Freud was actually onto a lot, right? Overbearing, what they call the devouring mother, a mother who's overbearing, who imposes her will and is completely domineering over her children. That's a recipe for sexual dysfunction in their kids. A father who's unavailable, who's not emotionally salient, right? These things are well understood. We're just not allowed to talk about them, right? And obviously there's the mitigating factor. So for example, you can have two children who are exactly the same. There's an overbearing mother, there's a father who is emotionally unavailable. One will become gay and the other one won't. And why is that? Because a lot of people are, well, why don't they both? It's because they're two different people, right? So depending on the person, and if you look at the personality profile, let's say you've got two boys. The boy who has got who is higher, for example, in extroversion, specifically in what do they call it? I forget the term now. But the boy who is higher in extroversion and self-confidence and lower in agreeableness and things like that will not become gay. However, he will become criminal, right? But the other one, who is more gentle, so who will be higher in agreeableness, higher in trait neuroticism, so higher in traits that are more typically feminine, right? So higher neuroticism, higher in openness, which is why so many homosexual people are into fashion and into the arts and all that kind of stuff. Higher in openness, higher in agreeableness, higher in neuroticism, they will then tend, because they've got a more gentle nature and stuff like that, the overbearing mother will more successfully impose her identity upon that boy, and that boy will then identify more strongly with the mother, and the father will be a mystery. He will never relate to the male sort of persona, and then for the rest of his life he will then eroticize the male persona, whereas the boy who has the same set of parents will but who has more aggressive traits, so he's disagreeable, he's perhaps a little bit lower in openness, and who's very high in assertiveness. That's the word I was looking for. Assertiveness, which is a trait of extroversion, so very high in assertiveness. That boy will become resentful of his mother and disrespectful of his father, because his father is not salient, and that boy will then go on to not only resent women but also become very, very criminal, and will generally abuse women, and will have a problem with authority and all that kind of stuff. So it's not that they both come out unscathed. It's just whatever parental abuse happens gets manifested in two different ways. The one will, depending on the personality, same situation, different personalities, different outcomes, and that's how it actually works out. But anyway, I've digressed completely. So there we go. So so Adam didn't witness it. The formation of the woman, when he opens up his eyes, there's this goddess, there's this amazing, wow, the other half of me is there, you know, and took one of his ribs, okay? And the rib which the Lord God had taken from the man made he a woman and brought her unto the man. Right? Let's just go a little step further. Right? Genesis 3. Oh, no, we don't want to. We don't want to go back one. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of a man. Right? By the way, men have all the chromosomes necessary to make a female, but females do not have all the chromosomes necessary to make a male. Do with that bit of information what you will. Okay? How did they know this? Okay? Right? Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother. Right? So this business of young men living at home until they're 40 was never intended. Okay? If you are the age of 25, 30, whatever, and you're still living at home, there's a problem. Find yourself a good woman, take some responsibility, right? Grow up and get out. Okay? And a lot of the reason, it goes to what I was saying before, a lot of the reasons why some men are still older and still living at home and stuff, it's not just economic stuff like that, because a lot of the times, chances are there's a devouring mother who won't let him leave, who won't let the child leave. Right? Which is why a lot of these creepy guys are like in their mother's basement, right? And resentful of the world and all that kind of stuff, right? And they end up being serial killers and things like that. It's exactly that what I was talking about earlier on, right? So that's what he was intended. That was the telos. That was what we were intended for. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. That's a whole other piece of doctrine that we can get into, right? And now we need to understand here, right? It says he could have taken her from the head, he could have taken her from the foot, could have taken her from his backside, or whatever the case might be, but he didn't do that. He took her from his rib, from the side, right? What does the rib do? What is the function of the ribs? Because in the Bible there's a reason for everything, right? First of all, comes out from the side. She's meant to be a helpmeet. She's supposed to stand next to him, right? And what else? What do the ribs do? The ribs protect the vital organs, right? It protects the heart, protects the lungs specifically. Okay? Protects the heart and the lungs. The breath of life, the heart, the love. It's not only men it's not only men that were designed to protect women. Women were also designed to protect men, just in a different way. All right, that's what this imagery is bringing forward. They both complement each other in that way. All right, and so it's not from, and this has been said before, it's not from the foot that a woman's supposed to be subject to us under our feet. A woman were not taken from our head. That pardon me, that woman was supposed to be in charge of us, the way the stupid feminists want to go around and, you know, woman must now rule the world and all that kind of stupidity, right? From the side, we're meant to be stand side by side and work together for a common, towards a common end, okay? And that's what it's about. This is not two contradictory creation stories, right? The first one is an overarching creation story, and the second one is now everything's created. Zoom into the Garden of Eden, zoom into the process that happened to not only establishing Adam's dominion over the world, right, but also the process that they went through. There's an object lesson here. There's a typological lesson. There's an object lesson here. It's talking now. We've zoomed in, and now we're talking about this process where God is now finding the perfect. What is the only thing missing to make this world absolutely perfect for this man? It's a woman, right? And nothing else will do. Nothing else will do. Man and woman. And for anyone to look into the Bible and to argue for anything else is just plain, it's dishonest. It's dishonest, and the reason why Christians cannot agree is because we believe in a different telos. We believe in telos, first of all. We believe that we were designed for a specific thing. So it's not just prejudice, because people reduce it to prejudice. It's not. We believe that men and women have a purpose, specific purpose set for us by God. We believe that we are happier together rather than apart, right? And Christians cannot agree, because we believe that if you don't adhere to the telos, to the original design, that you are going to harm yourself. So if we agree with the LGBT movement, and yes, there's a lot of Christians out there who are total retards, right? And who, for them, it is a question of prejudice, right? But for those of us who are thinking and are actual Christians in tune with our faith, the reason why we can't agree is because we honestly and genuinely believe that if we agree, then we are agreeing for people to go out and harm themselves. And not only harm themselves, but to continue harming others, right? And we cannot abide, and we can't agree with that. We can't agree with that. It's like the whole suicide thing, right? We can't. If someone's like, I'm gonna go kill myself, we can't agree with that. We cannot in good conscience agree with something that we believe is going to harm people. Because we believe that our bodies, that the genders were made for a specific reason, and everything was made, there is a telos attached. It's not arbitrary, right? There's an ultimate purpose to all things, and the genders, the part of the ultimate purpose of genders is to be together and to cooperate to make a better world together. Can't do it apart. Can't do it. This is why I despise feminism, and I despise meninism. So all these guys, this men going their own way, and all the male rights people and all the female rights people, and I'm not saying that they're all bad. A lot of them have good reason to be upset and stuff like that. Rape is obviously a legitimate issue, and a lot of the stuff that the guys are talking about is a legitimate issue, where men are also getting abused by women and stuff like that, and no one cares. They get a rough time. The law does not treat men and women equally, right? At all. Women can literally get away with murder, right? Men can't. So there are issues. There are problems and balances that has to happen. But in general, the whole political thing that is feminism and that is meninism and all that kind of stuff, it's nothing but the most damaged people in our society going out and making a noise and making everyone's life miserable, as far as I'm concerned. And a lot of those people, the reason why they're damaged and all that kind of stuff is because they had rubbish parents who never gave them an example of what a decent relationship is supposed to look like. And a lot of these people went out, made stupid decisions of their own, got harmed as a result, got harmed by the person of the opposite sex, and now have found themselves in a situation where they hate all members of the opposite sex merely because one person of the opposite sex harmed them. And it's like we need, and a lot of the time it's poor choices. It's poor choices, right? I deal with charities, and I deal with like homeless people and stuff like that. I've got, and a lot of these people, when you sort of look at them and you start and they start cleaning themselves up and they start working their way up and they tell you the stories, and you can see when you get them to read, when you start doing what we call cognitive behavioral therapy, and they start bringing out all of these issues. And it's like they themselves sit there and they're like, you know what, that was my mistake. I should have seen it coming. I should have seen the red flags, but I didn't. I ignored it. I didn't. And I should have seen that he was abusive, but I ignored it. I should have seen that she was a bit insane, but I ignored it, right? And then these young men and young women get together with each other and make each other's lives absolutely miserable. I've said for a long time, the person you get married to, right? The person you get married to will either be the best decision you ever make or the worst decision you ever make. There are very, very few decisions in the world, right? Like if we had to make a list of like the top 10, right? Who you marry will be right up, if not in spot like number one, like it'll be in like the top three, all right? There is no one on the planet who will make your life a living hell the way a bad spouse can, right? There's just nothing, right? Because friends, if you have a bad friend, you can just stop being friends with them, right? But the person you marry, and even your family, because that person becomes your family and all that kind of stuff, those decisions will be either the best or the absolute worst decisions you ever make in your entire life. And the whole feminist movement and the whole meninist movement and all of these battle of the sexes movements that you see out there, all of it is a product of generations of people who have done nothing but make the worst absolute decisions of their lives when it comes to one of the most important decisions of their lives. And that's, who am I going to sleep with? Who am I going to marry? Who am I going to open up my life to? And it ruins their lives. I see it every single day. I'm telling you, here in England, man, I see it all the time. How couples fight with each other, and they're miserable with each other, and how they cheat on each other and abuse each other. And this whole idea that it's only men abusing women is idiotic. It's totally retarded. It's both. They're utterly uncivilized. And the way they go out and what they do to each other. And then these idiots have kids. They have children together, and how they mistreat the children, and how these poor innocent children have to watch their parents, right, and see the absolute atrocity that is the interact meaning. And then these children, no wonder they grow up with a skewed view of what the world is supposed to be like, or what interpersonal relationships are supposed to be like, because the primary example of a relationship that a child has growing up and what they're seeing is an absolute catastrophe. No wonder. By the way, right, just an interesting little tidbit. Having a bad relationship with your father, right? A bad relationship with one's father is highly, highly correlated with atheism. Highly, highly. Bad relationship with your parents, but specifically your father, is highly, highly correlated to instances of atheism. So go check it out. It's uncanny. I forget what the correlation is, but it's statistically significant correlation. Very, very statistically significant. And it makes sense, obviously. How are you if your father is an idiot, you will not be able to bring yourself into believing that there is a father in heaven out there, someone out there. If the person you can see is a total abusive retard, how are you going to believe that there is someone out there who you can't see that actually loves and cares about you? You're not going to be able to believe that. There's no way you're going to be able, because the Bible uses that imagery that God is like a father, God the Father and the Son, and there's that relationship there, and He loves you and He cares for you. And if the people that you can see are a bunch of idiots, how are you going to believe that? Oh, it's impossible. It's impossible, right? It's very, very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. And to a certain degree, I can resonate, because I come from a dysfunctional family myself, and I used to be an atheist. I can resonate with these things, right? Because, I used to kid myself that being an atheist was an intellectual thing. It wasn't. It was an emotional thing. It was an emotional thing. It's because I was pissed off at the world. And why? Because I was pissed off with my family. Not only with my own personal family, but the church family. Because all the people at church were also a bunch of retards in a lot of ways, right? They don't practice what they preach. And if you look at all of the atheist rhetoric, it's all like that. They're pointing out a lot of that's why I said most of the arguments with atheism have to do on moral issues that atheists have with Christians, because we do not practice what we preach. We're miserable. We're hypocrites. And we mistreat each other, and we abuse each other, and we don't care for each other, not even that much of what we're supposed to care for each other at all, right? And having been in the atheist community, I had my reasons were almost identical to most of them. I'm not saying that everyone's reason is identically the same, but for the most part, it is. It is. How are we supposed to believe in this goodness and stuff like that, right? In God and religion and all these kinds of things. If the very institutions that God Himself instantiated as an icon of Himself are utterly dysfunctional and pathetic and injurious, no ways we're going to believe it, right? Christians, like, and this is something I always say to Christians, because Christians, I do not blame atheists. I do not blame atheists for being atheists. I do not blame atheists for any decline in Christianity, right? The decline in Christianity is the fault of the Christian. It's no one else's fault. In my personal opinion, the entire burden of responsibility for the existence of atheists, right, falls entirely squarely on the shoulder of Christians, because we behave like a bunch of idiots. And we get upset as Christians sometimes when atheists make really, really idiotic objections, right? Like the whole objection where atheists say that religion and science are opposed to each other. It's absolute utter garbage. But we can't blame them for having that opinion, because there are a lot of Christians out there who actually say that as much, who actually go out and want to reject scientific anything, right? And want to live in the flipping dark ages and behave like a bunch of utter imbeciles, right? Who are willing to let their kids die, right, rather than use modern medicine, right? You cannot blame an atheist for looking at that religion that does that and thinking this is pathetic. You cannot blame them. In fact, it is a miracle that there aren't more atheists. Strangely enough, it's a miracle there aren't more atheists, honestly, because even though I'm a Christian now, I used to be an atheist. Even though I'm a Christian now, let me tell you, I still feel the same way almost as when I was an atheist. I still feel the same way towards a lot of Christians, because I converted in spite of Christians, not because of anything wonderful that Christians were doing at all, but it's because the doctrine. And I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not trying to come down on all Christians. Obviously there are a lot of good Christians, and sort of, I'm speaking in general terms, right? But for me, I came in because Christianity, I believe, obviously you might not believe the same, that it's intellectually sound, it's philosophically sound, it's scientifically sound. I know that sounds crazy, but that it's scientifically sound. There's good evidence for it, etc., etc. There's good arguments, there's good reason, and I've seen and I've had my own personal experiences that have made me think it's got to be true. It's got to be true. There has to be a God. Otherwise, X, Y, and Z just couldn't happen. Just couldn't happen, right? There's got to be someone at the wheel behind all of this, right? But let me tell you, we're as Christians failing. That's it, right? And it's not that I'm trying to take anything away from atheists, because obviously atheists have their own minds, and I'm not trying to take that away from atheists, but we've made our religion we bear a massive share of the guilt, because in a lot of ways we've made it unpalatable, made very, very unpalatable. I mean, even us as Christians, right? Because we put on this farce that so wonderful Christian, but once you actually become a Christian, you see how much of it is a lie. It's a total bold-faced lie. We sit there and we can and we're ignoring the problems in our communities, flat out ignoring them. We're disgusted by our own people where we sit, but we're not allowed to say that because then you're being judgmental and you're criticizing the brethren and all that. And that's so the filth will fester. because we have this false piety way. Oh, we must never ever say anything bad against our brethren, and the whole concept of discernment has got right out the window. Right out the window. And so we sit and I've been a member of churches where for years and years and years, tens of years, they are sitting on the exact same problems as they were 10, 20, 30 years ago. The same problems, they never get resolved. Never get resolved. Because we say we believe in God, but a lot of us do not behave like we actually believe He exists. A lot of us don't. We need to get our act together. So, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I know I've really digressed. But, is there a contradiction here? No. There's no contradiction here. The person reading, whoever says there is illiterate or dishonest. There's no other way. There's no other way. Because it's not like this is even unknown in Christianity. We've known this, right? This is just like common knowledge. Well, not so common anymore, because Christians are becoming increasingly ignorant of what they believe, right? It's unbelievable, right? Unbelievable, right? Most Christians, just to show you how ignorant. I know I'm digressing, but maybe I've got a lot to get off my chest today, man. I was having a discussion, I was not a Christian yet when this happened. I was on my way to becoming a Christian, right? I was still investigating and all that kind of stuff. I was having a conversation with this one bloke. It was actually the father of a friend of mine, right? And they were Christian. And and his father was challenging me on a couple of things. And I talked about the Ten Commandments, right? Because I said I became convinced about the Sabbath issue. That's like you've got the Ten Commandments, and everyone's quite happy to not murder, to not steal, to not commit adultery, da 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 da. But for some reason, the fourth commandment about keeping the Sabbath day, all of it, they just ignore it, So it's like we'll keep 9 out of 10. We're happy with that. But the Sabbath, it's not and I'm not saying that the Lord's Day isn't a thing, right? If you want to celebrate the Lord's Day according to tradition, that's fine. If you want to commemorate it as a tradition of the crucifixion of Jesus, that's perfectly fine. But you won't find that as a commandment in the Bible, right? Anyway, so I'm having this discussion with this guy. He's a Christian, and he's been a Christian all his life, and the whole family, these people are fanatical Christians, man. Let me tell you, they're the type of Christians that you would cringe away from. Because I actually went with them to church once, and it's the kind of church that it's like people stand up and people stand up and prophesy. Not a single one of these retards has any idea what they're talking about, but they literally, it's that kind of, does anyone have a prophecy? And I'm going to prophesy, and then they just randomly just quote something out of the Bible, or anyway. So I'm talking to this guy about the Ten Commandments, and this look of confusion on the bloke's face was just unbelievable, right? Absolutely unbelievable. He's like, what do you mean this Ten Commandments? This guy didn't know what the Ten Commandments was. I had to ask his son, who was my friend, can you please go fetch your Bible in your bedroom, right? I took him there to Exodus 20, and I said, there's the Ten Commandments. How did you not know? Right? I said, how do you not know that this is here? I said, don't you read? Oh, it's been about 16 years. It's been about 16 years since this guy had opened up a Bible. Unbelievable. And you know what? Reading that there didn't change him. Didn't change him at all. He didn't go on to, no, they're exactly, they carried on exactly the same as before. And you know what? There are not a lot of Christians that'll admit this, right? And I'll probably get persecuted for saying so. But let me tell you, this kind of thing is more common than you'd believe amongst Christians. More common than you would believe. A lot of Christians come and they want to participate in the, oh, let's prophesy, fantastic. Or apologetics is all the rage now, okay? Everyone and his dog wants to, is apologetics, right? Because it's been really popularized by some great apologicians, right? You know, you've got your John Lennox and your Alvin Plantinga and William Lane Craig and Ravi Zacharias and all these kinds of people and stuff like that. And they have these massive followings. I tell you now, 90% of the people that follow, that support these ministries, if you had to come and ask them, listen, they wouldn't be able to. They wouldn't be able to. And I know this sounds very, very presumptuous of me. Very presumptuous. But I'm telling you now that that's what it's like. That's what it's like. You go and you actually try to have a conversation with a lot of these. Can't get one. Right? I've been to lunch, get invited to dinner by elders and pastors and whatever the case might be. And you know what is discussed around the dinner table? The Kardashians. I've had that. I'm not joking. I'm not making this up. I've had that. Right? Go to get invited to the house of a pastor or an elder or some prominent person in the church and stuff, because I've been on the board of churches and I've held leadership roles. You go for, on a Sabbath afternoon or a Sunday afternoon, whatever, have in dinner. What are they talking? They're talking about the Kardashians. They're talking about the most mind-numbing garbage. It's like you shouldn't even be polluting your mind with this garbage in the first place. And you're supposed to be, and things that they don't know. Like when I give a presentation, sometimes I get invited around in March. In next month, I'm going up to Manchester to go and give a talk there, right? And how many times, people will ask questions and stuff like that. And sometimes the elders just want to shut down the conversation. Or the elders themselves, will ask questions that you cannot believe an elder is asking. It's like, you should know this. And they're supposed to be leading the people. Anyway, so in a sense, I know I was very irritated in the beginning with how dishonest can an atheist be to pretend that there is a contradiction in this passage. Right. But in a sense, if this is the way Christians are behaving, which should be no surprise that this is what atheists think, that they're not informed and not clued up on this. Because I tell you, chances are, because I'll be fair, I've heard Christians raise this issue. Can you please explain? It's like, just read the thing. It's there. But they don't study. I get asked to teach Sabbath school, for example. I'm a Sabbath school teacher, so it's like Sunday school, right? Sabbath school is exactly the same thing, right? It's just a different day. You go and in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we've got a little study thing. Every day you go through, you do the little study and have a discussion and write down your answers and stuff like that. And then on Saturday, when you have Sabbath school, you go and discuss it. And, I get asked to teach, and fine. 90% of the people do not do it. Do not bother. They don't bother doing that. And it's not because they're busy with other studies. It's like, I would understand that if you were studying your faith so much that you didn't have time to do that, which is fine. Because the fact of the matter, the only reason why this study guide exists even in the first place is because, generally speaking, people are too useless to actually study on their own. So this is a kind of a hand-holding, spoon-feeding type of way of doing the whole thing, right? But they don't even do that. They don't even do that. And so you come there on a Saturday, and it's now time to discuss what you've learned, to raise questions, to learn. It doesn't happen. Well, no one's read it. It's like, you know, it's like coming to book club and going to book club, right? No one's read the book. That's what it's like. So, anyway. Oh my goodness. Tell you, can't get rid of this bronchitis soon enough. But anyway, I'm done. Ladies and gentlemen, I've gone on long enough. I thank you very much for your viewership. I hope that helps. This is not a contradiction at all. At all. It's ridiculous to even suggest it. So, thank you very much for your viewership. I'll see you next time. God bless. Take it easy. Bye.